viewers, you're welcome on HES online services. We are here to deliver, share knowledge in various aspects. I'm molecular biologist, and I'll be taking you through biology. It is an interesting subject. So I beg you give me your attention. At the end of the day, we take what we want. Today, I'll be looking at excretion, this is a very important process, life process in living organisms. It happens in both plants and animals. And this process helps organisms get rid of waste products of metabolism. So in other words, we are looking at a process by which waste products of metabolism are eliminated from the body. So we can have something here. We are saying this is a process by which waste products of metabolism are eliminated from the body. What is important about this is that the waste products, they are as a result of metabolism. So the body generates the waste products itself. So how important is this process? One is that these waste products of metabolism tend to be toxic in the body. So whenever they accumulate in the body, they end up causing toxicity. They end up causing harm to the body itself. And then the other very important aspect about this process is that these waste products of metabolism can affect the way the different processes occur in the body. So these waste products can also affect how the body performs or functions. So it is important to know where these waste products of metabolism come from. For example, if you digested a carbohydrate, we all know that carbohydrates, whenever they are digested, one of the end products of digestion of carbohydrates is glucose. So this glucose, in the process of assimilation, the glucose can be broken down to release energy. But energy is not the only thing formed. Alongside the energy being generated, we have carbon dioxide. Hope you're good at your chemistry. And then some water. Let's do this. And then some water. So in the process of breaking down the glucose, energy is generated, but they are products. For example, when you look at this carbon dioxide in the body, it's not needed because it is toxic. That is one thing. So the other thing, for example, if you have amino acids, these amino acids, whenever you take in a protein, we know well that these proteins here can, whenever they are taken in, they can be used by the body, but the excess cannot be stored by living organisms, especially the animals. So where does the excess amino acids go? The excess amino acids are going to be deaminated and converted into urea. Okay? It is a very long process. So when you look at this urea, it is one of the waste products of metabolism. So the important aspect is that the waste products do not come outside the body. They are generated within the body of organisms. So, for example, now if we are to give, let's look at the different examples of waste products. We've looked at carbon dioxide. We've looked at urea. The other thing is water. Water can be a waste product just in case it is in excess. Okay? So the excess water here can be a byproduct. Okay? The other is uric acid. We shall see which organisms generate that. Okay? So we have the uric acid there. We have excess salts. So, for example, any meal you take in, you normally take in common salt. In chemistry, that common salt is sodium chloride. So, sodium chloride, whenever it dissolves, it will generate the sodium ions and chloride ions. Those ions, whenever they are in excess, they tend to cause toxicity in the body. So they must be eliminated. Okay? We have others. Others include creatinine. Okay? Let's do this. Creatinine. We have bilirubin. We normally pay less attention to these. Okay? We have ammonia. We have ammonia. Now, for all these waste products you're seeing, there are very many, but we normally categorize them into two groups. Okay? So, allow me to rub off this. We can have the different category types of excretory waste products. So there are broadly two categories of waste products. One is the nitrogenous waste products, and then we have the non-nitrogenous waste products. Okay? So we are saying we have nitrogenous waste products, and then we have the non-nitrogenous waste products. Okay? We have the non-nitrogenous waste products. Let's have this waste products. So the important aspect by which we use to categorize these waste products is actually nitrogen. So the nitrogenous waste products are excretory waste products that contain the element nitrogen, and that's why we normally call them nitrogenous waste products. And then the non-nitrogenous waste products are excretory products, waste products that lack or that do not contain nitrogen as an element in them. So when you look at this clearly, we can give examples of each. Let me make it this way. One, we have ammonia. You must be very good with your chemistry. You realize this ammonia actually is written this chemically, the chemical formula of ammonia. Okay? So you realize the ammonia here has nitrogen, and that's why we can comfortably replace it in the nitrogenous waste products. Okay? We have urea. It is another nitrogenous waste product. You might not mind about this formula, but at least I want to break down this to show you that urea has nitrogen. This is the nitrogen here. Okay? This is the nitrogen there. Then we have uric acid. All these three have nitrogen, and that's why we are calling them, we can comfortably place them in the nitrogenous waste products category there. Then the non-nitrogenous waste products, like we said earlier, these waste products lack nitrogen as an element in them. And for example, actually we have carbon dioxide. Like we said, whenever we break down glucose in the process of respiration, carbon dioxide is going to be generated as a waste product. The other thing is water, excess water. Like I said, water is important in the body, but whenever it is in excess, then it becomes harmful. Okay? We have excess water, we have carbon dioxide. By the way, in plants, we can have oxygen. But fortunately, actually, we don't normally talk about this because whenever it accumulates in the body, it does not cause toxicity. So that should not confuse you. Okay? So we can leave it at this stage. Okay? We have creatinine. Okay? We have the salts, excess salts. Like I gave you an example of sodium chloride or excess iron, sodium ions, chloride ions. Okay? So these are examples of the nitrogen, the non-nitrogenous waste products. Okay? Alright, now we say excretion is a process by which waste products of metabolism are eliminated or removed from the body. What are some of the organs that help in the elimination of these waste products? So there are quite a number. Excretory organs. So these are organs that help in elimination or removal of the waste products we've generated here. For example, when you look at lungs help in eliminating carbon dioxide. Okay? So we can say this eliminates carbon dioxide, and actually it also eliminates water. This is so clear, you can try it down at home there. Try to exhale, breathe against a mirror. Okay? You realize you're going to have actually some water vapor coated on the mirror. So, lungs eliminate carbon dioxide, but at the same time, they can eliminate water. Okay? That is in terms of actually, they can eliminate water, water vapor there. Okay? So, this is one of the examples of the organs there, excretory organs. The other is the skin. The skin is very important. Okay? And it is one of, actually it is the largest organ outside the body. Largest organ outside the body. It has very many functions. One of the functions is excretion, but the others we can ignore them. We all know that it's also important in temperature regulation. It is also important in protecting the body against invasion of pathogenic organisms like bacteria. But for this particular tutorial, we shall look at the skin as an excretory organ. This skin here, okay, helps us eliminate excess water. The other thing is it eliminates excess salts. For those who have tried to test sweat, sweat is really salty. And why is it salty? There are salts there. The other thing is that this sweat here contains traces of urea. So we have very less amounts of urea in the sweat. Okay? So the collection of excess water, the salts and urea, this is what we call sweat. So these are those are examples of excreted products. So allow me to wrap up this. A mammal normally has 2 kidneys, and each of them participates in excretion. Now, excretion, okay, when you try to look at this kidney here, it does not only perform the function of excretion, it has other functions. But for this, let's look at it as an excretory organ here. So, when you look at this, excess water is an excretory product eliminated by the kidney. And most of the water is lost from the body through the kidney. Look at this. Lungs, water vapor is eliminated. The skin, water is generated. The kidney eliminates excess water. But when you try to look at among these, the kidney is the one that eliminates more of the water from the body. This also excretes urea. Okay. It also excretes excess water, urea. Then we have some minute substances here. We don't normally concentrate on them, but also creatinine. Creatinine can also be generated or eliminated by the kidney. So let's concentrate on these two. The other is the liver. Often you will miss out on the liver. The liver is important in excretion of bile pigments. Bile pigments. And if you try to read deeply into this, these bile pigments actually are normally got as a result of breakdown of old red blood cells. You're very conversant with this. Red blood cells have hemoglobin. So that heme part of hemoglobin can be broken down in the liver. So when it is broken down, we end up with bile pigments. Okay? Examples of those bile pigments, one of them is bilirubin. Bilirubin. You can give that. Okay? So that is it. Now, kidney, liver, lungs, skin, all those are excretory organs. Okay? In mammals. But they are always cross-cuts. We shall see that. The other, for example, when you try to look at the insects. Insects don't have lungs, neither do they have the kidney or the skin. What do they use as an excretory organ? They have what we call Malpighian tubules. Okay? So these Malpighian tubules help, or actually they eliminate waste products of metabolism from the insects. Okay? Watch out with that. I think we can stop at that. Kidney, lungs, skin, liver, the Malpighian tubule. We even have, by the way, in unicellular organisms, especially protozoans, you'd realize they have what we call a contractile vacuole. This contractile vacuole helps. Actually, this contractile vacuole eliminates excess water from the organism, the unicellular organism, especially amoeba. We also have the contractile vacuole in paramecium. Okay? So, that is it. Now, let's try to look at these keenly. We are going to talk about the nitrogenous wastes. Briefly, how are they eliminated? Which organisms produce these nitrogenous wastes? Okay? If you remember very well, nitrogenous excretory products. We said one of them is ammonia. I might not write down this, but listen. Ammonia is very soluble in water. By the fact that it is very soluble in water, you'd realize excreting it seems to be easy and requires less amount of energy. Okay? And this ammonia, in most cases, it is an excretory product of organisms that live in freshwater bodies. Because there is a lot of water there, then it becomes easy for these organisms to eliminate the ammonia there. Okay? So, organisms that excrete ammonia, freshwater, okay? Freshwater, or we can say freshwater organisms. It's okay. Freshwater organisms. What are the examples there? We have the bony fish. They can generate ammonia. We even have amphibians. Why am I bringing amphibians here? These organisms can live on land and in water. But when they are in water, they tend actually excrete ammonia. Okay? So, it is important to know which organisms excrete which excretory products. I'm going to talk about is urea. Now, when you look at urea, urea is less toxic than ammonia. It is less toxic. And then the other thing is that it requires a less amount of water for it to be eliminated. In other words, it is sparingly soluble in water. It's slightly soluble in water. And by that fact, organisms that excrete urea need a lot of energy. They need some energy to do the excretion. So, most of the organisms that excrete urea, I can do this, terrestrial organisms. So most of the organisms that live on land, but we have to be specific, okay? Mammals, let's say terrestrial mammals, this is better, terrestrial mammals, okay? All the mammals, including the human beings like us, like me, like you, they excrete urea. The other thing is that urea can also be generated or eliminated by amphibians. Look at this. Look at this. Amphibians. Why is this so? When amphibians are in land where there is less water, they excrete urea. But should they move and go to water bodies, fresh water bodies, they excrete ammonia. That is so important there. Okay? The other thing is that cartilaginous fish, excuse me, fish, okay, bony fish, ammonia, cartilaginous fish, urea, and these always are found in marine water bodies, not freshwater bodies. They are found in marine water bodies, especially the sea. Okay, these are sea dwellers there. Okay, so it is important to know that. And then lastly, let's talk about uric acid. Uric acid. So when you look at uric acid, it is less toxic than actual urea. And then what is it about this? Uric acid is insoluble in water. Okay? So because it is insoluble in water, it becomes so difficult to eliminate it from the body. So it means the organism here has to invest in some energy so as to eliminate it. Okay? So that is what you have to know. What are some of the organs that excrete uric acid? So when you look at the birds, they generate uric acid. Okay? When you look at the insects, these insects generate uric acid. Then when you look at the reptiles, mention any reptile, they normally excrete uric acid. Before we cross on to another thing, know what excretion is, what are some of the excretory products, okay? Know the different classes, and know at least the properties of each of the nitrogenous waste products. That will always be asked for, okay? Secretion. Now, how does secretion differ from excretion? Secretion is actually production and flow of useful biomolecules from living cells. What do we mean? For example, if you look at cells like the goblet cells, you must have looked at this in digestion, how they are important. The goblet cells. These goblet cells produce mucus. So when they produce mucus, we don't say mucus is excreted. This is what we call secretion. The goblet cell is producing something that is important in the body. Okay? The other thing, for example, glands can produce hormones. This is secretion. So, they'll tell you to distinguish. They'll always tell you to distinguish between excretion and secretion. We've said this is production and flow of important, okay, production and flow of important biomolecules from, of course, living cells, not just cells, living cells. And you can cite out this. Okay? Okay. Now, with that, we can cross over and now look at excretion in man. Let's try to be specific now. Okay? That has been a broad introduction. Now, excretion in man. Like I already brought out this. Let's not even make it too specific. It can be excretion in mammals or man. Okay. So when you look at this, remind yourself, mammals. An example there to be specific there. These the man. Okay. They have kidneys. They have kidneys. Okay? So here we are trying to look at excretory organs. Okay? In, let's say, mammals. Help me allow me to adjust this. Okay? Let me not be so specific. So let's say excretion in mammals. Okay? The skin, mammals have the skin. Okay? They have the lungs. And then we normally don't talk about this. But the liver is also important in excretion as I broke it down. Okay? We shall start with the kidneys as excretory organs. Okay? To know the structure of kidneys, what do they do? The kidneys, what do they do? Okay? And how are they able to bring about excretion? Okay? Mammals normally have a pair of kidneys. Okay? We have the right and left kidney. Okay? These kidneys have been shaped. So here we're trying to look at the structure. Okay? The other thing is that the kidneys are normally reddish brown. People who have tried to slaughter chicken, let's say you've slaughtered a goat before, when you try to look at them, they are indeed being shaped reddish in color. But in cases of diseases, their color can change. Okay? So let's try to dig. Let's try to dig deep into this. Okay? Structure of the kidney. Structure of the kidney. Let me try to draw this so that we understand. Okay? So, this kidney here has the outer layer. We shall see. An outer layer like that. Okay. Then have that. That, and then lastly that. Let's add something here. Okay. Then we have some two blood vessels here. So let's have that. If you try to look at this, the outermost layer of the kidney, we normally, actually it is called the cortex. When you try to look at this, from here out, here outwards, okay? All this is the cortex, from here to there, there to there. This is the what? The cortex. So we can have this as the cortex. It's the outermost part of the kidney. Then we have the medulla. Medulla. Now we have the medulla in very many organs. Okay? This is the innermost. So if you try to look at it critically, all this is the medulla. Okay? All this is the medulla. Now, if you try to look at the shape of this kidney here, you'd realize it has this part that bulges out. It is in form of a convex. So on one side, the kidney is convex shaped, but when you try to look at this side, it is in form of a concave. To remind you, this is a convex, planoconvex. So if you try to look at the other part, the other part of the kidney, it is convex shaped. Then on one side, if you try to look at it critically, it has some depression. Okay? So on the concave side of the kidney, we have what we call the ureter. Ureter. This, we shall see what this does. Okay? Then we have two blood vessels. Allow me to use arrows. Assuming that this is blood in. Okay? And blood, this is blood out. So this blood vessel that brings blood into the kidney, that is supplying the kidney, we call it the renal artery. Why an artery? It's because this blood vessel is supplying the kidney with blood, okay, containing oxygen and some nutrients, okay. Then the other thing is that we have this blood vessel, just concentrate on the arrow, this blood vessel here. Let's do this. That brings blood out with, it is a vein, okay, renal vein. Why a vein? It's because it is draining blood out of the kidney. This part where the ureter enters into the kidney, okay, this part, we normally call it the hilus. Hilus. Okay, it's one, then helium. There are two. Okay, so the hilus, if you try to compare with the bean, in the bean, you have some called the micropipe. So this is not the micropipe, this is the hilus. All this part where the ureter enters into the kidney. Then we have some area here, this. Okay, this is what we call, so let's not congest this. Okay, let's start with this. When we try to look at this, each of these is cone-shaped. All this, that. So this part here, okay, is what we call a pyramid. We call it a pyramid. Then this part that I labeled here, okay, this is what we call the pelvis. So in brief, try to look at that in detail. That explains the structure of the kidney. Now, we are going to go on to some important aspect here, okay? How does the kidney eliminate the excess water, the urea, and the excess salt, okay? So in other words, we are going to be looking at it in the aspect of it being an excretory organ, okay? Now, let's try to look at this. The kidney, functions of the kidney, One, we said eliminates waste products from the body. So in other texts, they will always tell you it filters blood. So it is going to remove the toxic elements of blood. So therefore, you're trying to look at it in terms of it is trying to filter out blood, removing the waste products from the blood to be specific. Okay. So besides that, this kidney is also very important in osmoregulation. You can look at it as an osmoregulatory organ. What does this mean? Osmoregulation is actually the process of balancing the osmotic pressure of body fluids. Okay? We shall look at this in detail in the next chapter there. So we can look at it as an osmoregulatory organ. And then it is also very important in regulation of pH. Regulation of blood pH. Important in regulation of blood pH. So, let's look at how does the kidney excrete waste products. As an excretory organ. As an excretory organ. In the diagram I gave you, you'd realize there are some parts I didn't give you. Where does the actual filtration of blood occur? Actual elimination. You realize this kidney has what we call a nephron. Okay? Nephron. So the nephron is part of the kidney, okay, where actual filtration of blood occurs, or actual elimination of these waste products we talked about occurs. So in other words, this is a basic functional unit of the kidney. Basic functional unit of the kidney. And it is actually the actual site where filtration of blood occurs. Okay? So, let's look at this. What is the structure of the nephron? Or before we even look at this. Now, when you look at the kidney works hand in hand with other organs. So, for example, when urine is formed, okay, this urine is supposed to be taken and stored somewhere in the urinary bladder temporarily. There must be passages where the urine formed in the kidney goes to the urinary bladder. So it is important to know that. Okay. Maybe let's try to pause on this. Let me try to make it so clear for you. Okay. So, these form a system. This system is what we call the urinary system. Before we cross to this, allow me to talk about this to open up our minds. So, the urinary system. So, the urinary system is made of up to the kidneys, that is the major organ there, the two kidneys. Okay. It has the ureter, it has the urethra, and then it has the urinary bladder that is normally closed. At times, we can have opening of the urinary bladder, closure of the urinary bladder by the help of the sphincter muscles. So, there is a lot of drawing here. So, we have the left kidney. Let me try to hurry. We have the right kidney, left kidney. So we have a blood vessel that actually comes right away from the heart. If you remember very well, that blood vessel that supplies blood, all the other parts of the body, we normally call it the aorta. Okay? So when you look at this is the aorta. It comes right away from the heart. But this aorta here has branches. We can have a branch to this kidney. Then we can have a branch to this other kidney here. Like that. So when you try to look at this, let me use that arrow. Then this. Let's put it down here. That. This is trying to show actual flow of blood. Blood comes from the heart through the aorta. Then it will have to come to the left kidney and the right kidney. And what is this blood vessel? To remind you, we said this because it is supplying the kidney. Then this is the renal artery. Maybe to be specific, it is the left renal artery, then this is the right renal artery. Then, at the same time, there is a blood vessel that takes blood to the heart. Okay? So let's have that. So we have a branch coming from this kidney here, like that. Let that go down. So this, try to show you that blood is leaving the kidney to this blood vessel that it is taken to the heart. There's this, then we also have a branch on this other side, taking it to the left. Taking it to the left kidney there, like that. It drains this other kidney. So this blood vessel here, where blood is being taken away from the kidney, this is what we call the renal, okay? The renal vein. Why vein? Because it is draining the kidney. Now, these two blood vessels, actually, these two, you realize this kidney and this kidney has a tube leaving it. Let's try to put it here. And this tube goes right away. Some sac-like structure. Let's have it this way. We have this on this other side. Then we also have that. Okay? Like that. So, each of these tubes you're seeing is what we call the ureter. These actually do actual transportation of the urine formed in the kidney to the urinary bladder. So this is the urinary bladder. That's where the urine, after the urine being formed in these kidneys, it's going to be transported and stored here temporarily. But, okay, this other lower part here is covered by some muscle. Let me make it clear for you. This other part is normally contains some muscle here. This muscle is elastic. So this muscle can open just in case the urinary bladder is filled with urine, or it can contract so that the urinary bladder is closed. Okay? So in cases where the urinary bladder is filled with urine, then the sphincter muscle, this here, we are calling it sphincter muscle. This muscle here controls flow of urine out of the urinary bladder. Then you'd realize we have a passage here. This passage here, this here, is what we call the urethra. Urethra. Mark this. This confuses students. Ureter. Ureter. Then we have urethra. This is the passage of urine outside the body. Ureter. Passage. It's the passage of urine from the kidneys, okay, to the urinary bladder. So all this is what we call the urinary system. So it is important to know that the kidneys are working along with some other structures. Okay? So that can go to you and they can tell you to label, draw and label, or they draw for you, then they tell you to name the different parts. Okay, with this, let's cross back to this. We've talked about the kidney forming urine. Where does this, how is this urine formed? This urine is formed by a very big process we are going to be looking at, but we are going to break it down, okay? And where is this urine formed? Say it is formed in the nephron. So therefore, that's why we normally call the nephron. By the way, this N, we can ignore it, okay? The nephron is the basic functional unit of the kidney. So we are going to have another drawing. Because you're still copying that, allow me to put this drawing here. So, structure of the nephron. There is a lot to talk about, but let me first draw, then we shall see what does each of those parts of the nephron do. Okay? The kidney is normally supplied. Okay? The kidney is normally supplied. That's why you have this supply by the renal artery. This renal artery has branches from it. This here, look at this. This renal artery here, this artery here, is supplying the kidney. So it also has a branch. Those branches from the renal artery, that's what we normally call the afferent artery. Okay? So we have a blood vessel here. Seems to be large. There are two of them. I want us to appreciate this. This blood vessel seems to be bigger than the other. This blood vessel here is what we are calling the afferent artery. And I told you it comes from the renal artery. Okay? Then we have this. So blood comes this way. And then comes here, then it can go out of the nephron via this blood vessel here. This blood vessel is smaller. Okay? So we call it the efferent. Okay? Artery. The other alternative names, you will always find this afferent vessel, efferent vessel. It all works. Okay? Now, this, we have other parts. We have some cup-shaped structure there, like that. Let me make it smaller so that this diagram fits on our blackboard. Like that. So we have some kind of coiling here, like that. Okay. So this other tube is too long, like that. In some animals, it is too long. In some animals, like that, and short in others. So this other tube makes some kind of U-turn. Let's do this. Some kind of U-turn. Like that. The first part, where is the duster? The duster is here. That. Then this turns upwards, like that. Hope you're observing in the silence that we have another coil, some kind of coil beside that. Like that. We'll try to pull this down, but it's okay. Okay? Make it clear. So, back to this. This ends up in another tube, like that. So, this vessel here, the afferent material, when it enters here, it gives off branches. It branches into capillaries, blood capillaries. These capillaries are coiled. They are coiled. So these blood capillaries are coiled and end up forming knots. Those knots formed from the blood capillaries are what we call glomeruli. Okay? Let's put it here. So each of these, let's see where should we put it. Let's put it here. Okay? This is what we are calling glomerulus. Glomerulus. Each of those knots, and I've told you how it is formed. Then we have this other part. Let's try to make it bigger. This other part that is cup-shaped, this is what we call the Bowman's capsule. Bowman's capsule. Shall see what it does. This first coil, right out from the Bowman's capsule, allow me to do this, is what we call the proximal convoluted. Look at the spelling critically. Convoluted tubule. It is not convoluted. This is wrong. Convoluted. No. Very wrong. Most students do this. For the scripts I've always marked. They always write this. It is convoluted tubule. Now, this proximal convoluted tubule ends up in another tube that moves downwards. Okay? I want you to look at this. We have this tube moving down, then we have this other going up. So because it is moving down, it is actually, let's put it clear. This part, lower part here, is what we call the loop of Henle. Loop. It is U-shaped. Loop of Henle. Don't write Henry for us. It is Henle. Loop of Henle. It has two arms. Okay? On this other side, because this arm is moving downwards, okay, this limb is moving downwards, we can call it the descending limb. This thing is congested, but let's bear with it. This other one is what we call the descending limb of loop of Henle, like that. And then we have this other. You would allow me to put it here because the other side is, packed. This other. This, right out from this upwards, is what we call the ascending limb. Ascending limb of loop of Henle. Hope we are together. Try to look at this. We have another coil coming from the ascending limb of loop of Henle. This coil here is what we call the distal. Okay? This here is what we call, this coil here is what we call the distal convoluted. convoluted tubule. You see that? What is the take home? This highly coiled, the first part, then the other highly coiled. Proximal convoluted tubule, distal convoluted tubule. We shall see how important it is. And then we have what we call the collecting duct. This other tube you're seeing here. It's what we call the collecting duct. So, mark that. How then does urine form with? We shall be winding up with this. Urine formation. How is urine formed in this other part? Is what we call urination. Okay? So we are going to be looking at process. Urine formation. I beg your pardon for this. The process by which urine is eliminated from the urinary bladder outside the body is what we call urination. Okay, let me make it clear. Let me put it up here. Urination process of passing urine outside the body. Okay? Outside the body. And this urine, process of passing urine outside the body, and this urine comes from the urinary bladder. Let me make it so clear here. Urination is very different from urine formation. Urine formation for it is what we call urinification. Urinification. So you can be told to distinguish between urination and urinification. Urinification is the process of forming urine in the kidney, particularly the nephron. But urination, actual passing out of urine outside the body. So let me try to be brief. When you look at this, I'm going to mention about each of these parts. The afferent arteriole, this brings blood, transports blood, okay, with all its components to the nephron. And then the other thing is that this blood that has been transported to the nephron, okay, can be taken back via the efferent arteriole. Okay, I'll be relating this. Okay, so the process of urine formation, we can broadly categorize it into three, normally two processes. One of the processes is what we call ultrafiltration. Ultrafiltration, and then we have what we call selective reabsorption. We rarely bring out this, but you should know we also have what we call tubular secretion. Let me rush to this. Ultrafiltration, filtration. If you remember this very well, filtration is the process of separating solid materials from liquid parts. Okay? So if you have a mixture having the solid parts and then the urine, or rather the liquid part, that's that process of separating such a mix is what we call filtration. But that is according to chemistry. Here, ultrafiltration, the nephron is going to filter blood, okay? But it's going to use pressure. Ultra pressure filtration. We are filtering blood using high pressure. So, in other words, ultrafiltration is the process of filtering blood at a high pressure. Let's try to look at it in detail. Try to dig in this. Try to dig this in detail. Okay. So ultra filtration, and I'm not right, but listen. Now remember, we say blood has very many things. It has the cellular component of blood. What do I mean here? Look at all the cells in blood. Red blood cells. We have the white blood cells. Okay? Let's look at this majorly. That is contained in blood. Remember that blood is coming to the nephron, but it has the red blood cells, white blood cells. This blood also has it has proteins that were digested, and then we can have amino acids as well. These amino acids are got as a result of breakdown of the proteins. It has ions. You can call these salts or ions. It has glucose. Where is this glucose coming from? Glucose is coming from digestion of the carbohydrates. Okay? We have urea. All that is in blood. We have water. We can't forget this. If you remember very well, that liquid part of blood is not called plasma, but plasma has more water, okay? And then the others, okay? Let's try to look at this. We have vitamins. All this is found in blood, but most of these are end products of digestion or wastes from the different metabolic reactions. For example, when you look at this urea, it's a waste product. Water, waste product as we looked at it. Salts, ions, waste product. So how do these waste products here get separated from the blood? Okay, that is by ultrafiltration. Now, when blood containing all these comes to the nephron, is transported to the nephron via the afferent artery. This artery is large. By the fact that it is large, it brings a larger volume of blood to the nephron via the afferent artery. Now, by the fact that more blood is coming than it leaves, remember we said this afferent artery is small. By the fact that it is small, less blood will always leave the nephron. So, more blood is coming in than it leaves. What does that imply? We are going to have a build-up in pressure in this part. Okay? In this other part, we are calling the glomerulus. We are going to have a build-up of pressure in the glomerulus. Okay? Now, by that fact, remember I told you how the glomerulus are formed. The glomerulus is formed when you have blood, highly coiled blood capillaries forming knots. And those blood capillaries are porous, but they can only allow molecules that are small to pass through them. So what does it mean? By the fact that there is a high pressure, that pressure we normally call it hydrostatic pressure. Hydrostatic pressure. Hydrostatic pressure, even in your other subjects, in science subjects like physics, hydrostatic pressure normally results from fluids. So, fluid coming, but this fluid has some components, okay? That pressure is going to force small materials to pass through the glomerulus, those the membranes of the glomerulus. And they will pass through, okay? They pass through, and then they always go through of course, the Bowman's capsule, and then eventually they end up in the proximal convoluted tube. This is a very common question. What are the materials that are filtered out? Okay? Proteins are too large, have a large molecular mass. They are large. By the fact that they are large, they can't pass through the tiny pores of the glomerulus. Okay? The other thing are the red blood cells, and of course the white blood cells. Okay? Red blood cells, white blood cells. That is the cellular component of blood now. Okay? These can never pass through. Then we can ignore this. There are some amino acids that are large amino acids. like amino acids can also fail to pass through because they are large. Okay? So, we've said these are materials that do not pass through. Do not pass through the glomerulus. Why? Because they are large in size. Okay? So, the fluid formed, that fluid formed after filtering blood at a very high pressure, okay, is what we call the glomerular filtrate. So, any fluid that is going to be passed, okay, from the glomerulus to the bone marrow capsule and eventually end up in the proximal convoluted tubule, that fluid is what we call the glomerular filtrate. In the process of filtration, whatever passes through, okay, we normally call it a filtrate. So here we are ending up with a glomerular, we end up with the glomerular filtrate. So in other words, the glomerular filtrate contains all these apart from, okay, it contains these apart from proteins and red blood cells. In other words, the glomerular filtrate has urea, okay, contains urea, water, glucose, vitamins, salts, proteins, amino acids, okay? Apart from these, why? These are smaller, but these are large. But the small ones will pass through. Now, remember, now here we are filtering, we are separating the useful components from those that seem to be harmful. But remember, when you look at the glomerular filtrate, water is important. Okay? Glucose is important. Salts are important. Amino acids are important. So what must happen now? The body will ensure, the nephron will ensure that these important components are not lost in urine. So they must be taken back to blood. Okay? That's at this point that we are going to bring what we call selective reabsorption. We are going to, these important substances are going to be reabsorbed back into blood because they are important, but the absorption, okay, reabsorption has to be selective. Okay, some of the components are going to be taken back to the bloodstream and others will be retained within the glomerular filtrate. Allow me wrap off this. The second process we are going to be looking at here is selective reabsorption. Selective reabsorption. Selective reabsorption. So this is the process of passing the important biomolecules back into the bloodstream. Okay? And this is done by different processes. Okay? Let me try to break down this. When you look at glucose, vitamins, amino acids, these are going to be transported back into the bloodstream using some energy. So they are going to be transported, reabsorbed actively. So we have active transport here, active transport of glucose, vitamins, okay, some of the ions here, the salts, and then amino acids back into the bloodstream. There are those, now by the fact that glucose is going back into the bloodstream, when you try to look, we have blood vessels here. So when you look at the concentration of glucose on either side, this glucose has gone here, okay? That is going to create a difference in concentration between the glomerular filtrate in this proximal convoluted tubule and this blood in this blood vessel. So that is going to create a diffusion gradient. What does that mean? Eventually, water is going to flow back into blood. by a process we are calling we normally call osmosis. So we also have osmotic flow of water to the bloodstream, So what does that mean? All these are taken back into the bloodstream. But what is so technical about this? Remember, water is going back into the bloodstream. That means each time the glomerular filtrate flows downwards to the loop of Henle, down along the descending limb of loop of Henle, the glomerular filtrate, actually now we don't call it the glomerular filtrate, as long as it has passed via the proximal convoluted tubule, we end up with the renal fluid. That renal fluid tends to be concentrated as it moves down to the renal, as it moves down the loop of Henle. So that is important. Assuming, okay, let's leave it at that. Okay, when the renal fluid moves down the descending limb of loop of Henle, it becomes concentrated at each point. So it means by the time the renal fluid reaches at this tip, it is very concentrated. Now, on this other side, there are two parts you can see here of the ascending limb of loop of Henle. We have the thin and thick. This thin, both limbs are impermeable to water. Okay? They are impermeable to water, but when you look at this part here, the lower part is it is impermeable, both cases are impermeable to water. Now, what does that mean? But it is permeable to ions. So, as the renal fluid moves now up the ascending limb, water cannot leave because the walls of the ascending limb of loop of Henle are impermeable to water. But salts can leave. Salts can be pumped out using energy actively. Okay, active transport using some energy, ATP. So it means salts like sodium ions can move back to the bloodstream, but water does not go. It means as the fluid moves up the ascending limb, it now becomes dilute instead. And then when it reaches here, we are going to have reabsorption of steel ions, especially the chloride ions, are going to be absorbed back to the bloodstream. We have reabsorption of some water here. Okay? And that is all about selective reabsorption. It occurs within these tubules here, right here, okay? Now, lastly, there's what we call tubular secretion. This is not normally brought out, but there are cases where in some materials in blood are brought right away here. They are secreted into the distal convoluted tubule. At times, they can be brought or secreted in the convoluted tubule. For example, when you look at hydrogen ions in blood, kidney is important in regulation of the blood pH. How does it do it? So, when you look at this, hydrogen ions can be actively pumped into the distal convoluted tubule. That is what we are calling, that's what we call tubular secretion, production of hydrogen ions into the distal convoluted tubules and at times the proximal convoluted tubule. Other substances that can be secreted in this distal convoluted tubule is creatinine. Creatinine can also be brought here, but we don't normally talk about that. Okay? Now, when you look at this, glucose, vitamins, ions, amino acids taken back to the bloodstream. Water taken back. What is remaining? You realize by the time that fluid reaches here, as long as your kidney is functioning normally, you realize you only have the water that is excess. The kidney will try to reabsorb, okay, water, but if it is a lot, then some of it will be retained within these tubules. And then we have urea. Urea is not reabsorbed back, okay? And then salts, if they're in excess, they also remain. That, it means the fluid that comes here, by the time it reaches here, from here. That's what we call now urine. So in the collecting duct, the importance of the collecting duct is to ensure that, of course, we say there is some kind of reabsorption, there is some kind of tubular secretion of hydrogen ions in this tube. Some other substances like creatinine can be also secreted here. Then this collecting duct, this is one different. The different collecting ducts will emerge, and then they'll end up forming the pelvis, which pelvis is going to transport this urine to the ureter, and eventually the urine will end up in the urinary bladder. So whatever we talked about here, that's what we call urinification, process of forming urine. Urination, we made that clear, process of passing urine outside the body. Lastly, these lungs in brief. If you looked at this topic, gaseous exchange, respiration, gaseous exchange. Okay? Now, gaseous exchange, you realize these lungs here are very important. One, they ensure that oxygen is availed to the body, and then they also ensure that carbon dioxide is eliminated from the body. So, because the topic here is excretion, we are looking at the lungs eliminating carbon dioxide, but at the same time eliminating water vapor, like I told you. Okay? This is so simple. These lungs here work hand in hand with other structures in the process of exhalation. At times we call it expiration. Expiration. The muscles, the external intercostal muscles, tend to contract. When they contract, the internal intercostal muscles relax. These muscles here work antagonistically. Okay? They bring about opposite effects. So that will ensure that the ribcage moves up and outwards. So when the ribcage moves upwards and outwards, that is going to increase the volume within the thoracic region. So what does that imply? When volume increases within the thoracic volume, when the volume increases in the thoracic cavity, I beg your pardon, you'd realize that the volume in the lungs also, the volume in the lungs, let me make it clear here. In the process, I beg your pardon, in the process of exhalation, you'd realize the external intercostal muscles are going to relax. Okay? Then the internal intercostal muscles, for them, they will contract. In the process of exhalation, the other initial thing we talked about was inhalation. For exhalation, you realize the ribcage is going to move down and inwards. That is going to decrease the volume within the thoracic cavity. So when the volume within the thoracic cavity decreases, volume in the lungs will also decrease, forcing the pressure in the lungs to increase, and that pressure is going to ensure that carbon dioxide in the alveoli is expelled out. Okay? Is expelled out. And that's what we call exhalation. By that, carbon dioxide that is a waste product is being eliminated, so it's being excreted. But it comes along with some water vapor. Let me beg to end here. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial. This is to ensure that you understand the notes you already have there. For any other information, you can contact me via the number, and I will be of help to you. Okay? So the senior threes, I didn't want to be so specific. Senior threes, you can have this, but it does not mean senior threes can ignore it, because you will still have to look at this. Senior fours, you can also have this in the process of revision. Stay at HES online platform for the best. I wish you well. Mask up. COVID is real. I wish you the best.